So you might have just finished your website and you put that nice, great big picture of your gear at the very top and you're so excited to start getting your clients, but you might want to think twice about how you've done that, because let's face it, gear isn't going to be bringing in the clients that you want. So when I was at the highest point of my career, I actually didn't really have that much gear. I had like a basic interface, like a Fireface RME 800, which had like 4 channels on it and then 8 in the back, so you could like snake into there. A couple microphones, maybe a couple of external preamps, no external processing. I didn't have like any external compressors, anything like that. In fact, I actually never even had my own website. So I think most of my business that I ever got was just from my name and my sound that I would get on my records. I think one of the interesting things is like a lot of people would kind of be surprised because they would come in, I would record from my house. People would come in and just sort of be like, oh, so this is where you make your music. And it never really felt or even looked like a studio environment. And I think that surprised people. But at the same time, people knew what I was capable of, and so they never questioned it. Yeah, take it from me, I mean, people would come in from all different situations. Some people had maybe recorded in a big studio before, or, you know, always wanted to record in a big studio, but I would still come in and approach their project with as much time and care as anybody else, and I think that that's what they appreciate the most. It's not like, you know, they walk in and go, oh man, we chose the wrong guy because he doesn't have this or he doesn't have that. And sure, those kind of things matter sometimes. It's like, you know, maybe there's a guy in the band who sort of cares about this recording stuff and all this gear, and maybe he looks on your website and tries to figure out, you know, does this guy have a Kemper? Does he, you know? And of course you're gonna run into people like that all the time. But I think the main thing to focus on is just, you know, the gear isn't necessarily what's going to be bringing you the clients. I mean, it can in some situations, but ultimately I feel like what you need to be focused on is how can you get your clients to achieve their goals? Like, think of it through their eyes. You know, looking at your website, if I'm a vocalist, am I going to be like, oh, I can't wait to plug my microphone into that preamp he's got sitting on that table right there? I don't think the vocalist is necessarily thinking of that, right? They're probably thinking about like, how do I get more fans? How do I make more money with my band? How do I get on bigger tours? And if you are part of that process in terms of what you can do with making them sound great, then that's all that's really gonna matter to the artist, honestly. Yeah, so I mean, sometimes you're gonna get a band that wants to work with you because they love what you do, but they also want that gear that maybe you don't have. That's not gonna be a deal breaker all the time. I can remember, in fact, we're in NRG here today, one of the most world famous recording studios, and Asking Alexandria wanted to do some stuff here, so they figured out a way to fly me out and make that happen. And that's a perfect example of how, you know, some kid from, like me, from Connorsville, Indiana, can, you know, make badass records with very little, and then be flown to LA and still work in an environment like this where this gear is. I mean, the fact of the matter is you're not going to be recording everything in the same place all the time, especially as you grow and progress through your career. You're going to travel, you're going to work in different studios for different reasons. And so that's why, like, you know, if you're focusing so much on like, oh, I've got this piece of gear, I got that, like, who cares? Like, I can go here and now I have this. I've got this piece of gear here today. There's tons of guys who just have basically all that they need to do, like maybe like vocals and guitars, but whenever they got to do drums, they will just come to a place like this and use a studio for that reason. So, you know, it's not like you have to have this SSL board in your studio to be cranking out records. I mean, you can just go and use one. So why put it front and center when the main goal is to attract, you know, the people that like want your sound rather than want your board. In fact, I would almost argue that you're selling yourself short by just being like, okay, well, I've got this board, so does 30 other people, right? So why would I go to you? What's special about you? And that's what you need to put front and center. There's basically graveyards filled with recording studios that put all of their gear front and center rather than all of the results that they got for their clients. And I think NRG is a good example of how, you see all the plaques on the wall and you go, okay, this place is legit, regardless of all their awesome gear that they have. I mean, they've got a wall of success to show for it. And I think that is where, you should be focusing on. For example, when we show up to a studio to work with Nail the Mix, we're looking for a good experience, and we're booking it because of the reputation of the studio, not because of what awesome gear they have. Now, that's a plus for sure, and actually can be very helpful at times, but the front and center is the thing that you want to focus on, and that's where you want to shine. Let's think of it like this. There's basically a hierarchy of what is going through the musician's mind. First, they're going to want to know, what have you done and what are you capable of? And if you can display that very quickly by maybe showing off some stuff that you've recorded or a couple of albums that you've done, they can instantly consume that and know, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. Secondly, they're probably going to care a little bit about the experience, like, is it going to be in a nice place? Am I going to be comfortable? Will there be distractions? Knock that out of the park with a couple of pictures of your room or whatever it is that you've got going on with your studio to kind of show them what the experience will be like. Next, they're probably going to care about your gear. And I know we've been talking about how the gear matters a lot less, but that doesn't mean it doesn't matter at all. It actually does factor into that. And there's going to be some dudes in the band that know what kind of gear you're using, because let's face it, every band has at least one gear nerd or somebody who's into recording on the side. And that guy is going to look at your list and be like, oh yeah, he knows what he's doing, and tell the rest of the band, that everything's good. So if you think about the hierarchy of how these things matter, you'll see that the very first thing that you lead with should be your accomplishments and what kind of work you do, so that they can then start to dig further and further through the rabbit hole and find out that you are legit once they reach your gear list. Also, if the top things in the hierarchy are taken care of, and maybe there's one of those levels that you're not reaching, for example, maybe you need one of these boards, those things can be figured out. It's not impossible to travel to a studio that has one to take care of your client. Even myself, I've done this many times, so trust me, it's compatible for you. Let's face it, it's basically going to be impossible to please everyone. You might have a band that wants to use Axe Effects and all you have is a Kemper, or vice versa. You can't own all the gear in the world, and you never will be able to, so why worry about it so much? And then also, why rely on it so much? I would say, there's going to be times where you're going to have to rent something, you're going to have to borrow something, you need to buy something, you need to travel somewhere. Think of all these things and then consider, what should I be placing in front of my potential clients to get them to come in? And you'll quickly see that by putting the Kemper on your site, you're pushing away all the Axe Effects people, and by putting the Axe Effects on your site, you'll be pushing away all the Kemper people, and by putting both of them on your website, you're going to be pushing everybody away that wants to use real amps. So eventually, you're going to have a picture on your website that has Axe Effects and Kemper and real amps and microphones, and then now, okay, well, what about the guy that doesn't even know anything about that stuff, right? So what do you think? You think somebody wants to come and record at a Guitar Center? No, they want to record at a recording studio. So show them that. Show them that you're a creative person and that you care about making music, not about gear. Okay, questions and actions. Number one, how are you presenting yourself and what are you putting front and center? Are you presenting yourself as this gear nerd or a dude that's really creative and cares about music? Now that you've taken stock of how you're presenting yourself, ask yourself, is this how you want to be presented, and is it getting you the kind of clients that you want? For example, if you want to be the metal guy, but you keep getting all these country artists, is it because you're doing these weird, professional-looking advertisements on Facebook? Finally, what do you think you could change in your presentation to get yourself more in line with your goals? We want to know what you think, so leave your thoughts in the comments below and let's start a discussion. I'm Joey Sturgis, and this is the Career Builder Show.